Right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Promised Land podcast, or should I say, a Promised Land podcast YouTube live stream. If anybody's here and you want to join in, please get in the live chat. If you're listening to this episode after the fact and on audio platforms, then yeah, you can catch me on YouTube on a new channel. The link is in the description of this episode if you're listening on both Apple and Spotify. And what I'm going to be doing here, maybe for the foreseeable future, is maybe coming to you most days talking about the speculation that there is in the world of Manchester United. We know that they need to strengthen the team a hell of a lot. We know that they need to get rid of a lot of players, and I will be talking about some potential additions that they could make to their team, or how much we should believe them. Over the course of this episode, I'll also be talking about a report which has suggested that Ruben Amorim has essentially, or is going to omit 4 players that United are trying to sell from the preseason tour of the USA. Anyway, you can subscribe to this channel on Apple, Spotify, YouTube as well. All the links should be in the description. If you're watching me on YouTube live at the moment, I can't actually do that yet. This channel is that new that I can't put hyperlinks in them. But welcome to the show, and please get involved if you would like to do so and ask me any questions. Get involved in the chat section. Follow me on social media at _Scott Saunders on X, Instagram and TikTok. And yeah, please get involved. I would really appreciate it. Warwick Road Andy says, good to see and hear from you. Hello, mate. This is a different time to what I'm usually looking to stream on. I've done a couple of streams on this channel so far, and they've tended to be at like 4 or 5 p.m. in the afternoon. But I have some commitments later today, so I thought I'd try out this slot instead. What I'm going to be doing over the course of this episode is essentially running through some stories on stream and getting to the bottom of them, and like analysing, in my own opinion, whether we think that these are links that are worth merit, that have merit, and this kind of thing. And obviously, there's a lot of speculation that goes on around Manchester United in these transfer windows, just in general, because this is Manchester United, the biggest club, or one of the biggest clubs in the world. And obviously, with them failing so frequently and so often, there comes a lot of noise with it. And sometimes it can be difficult to separate. What's the phrase? The wheat from the chat. I don't know. Like, there's lots and lots of speculation, basically, is what I'm trying to say, and I'll be digging into it on this episode of the Promised Land podcast. So yes, please subscribe on this channel. Please subscribe on Apple and Spotify and any audio platforms you would like to do so as well. The podcast should be available anywhere you would like in audio format, just an hour or two after this. Anyway, let's get into it. Today I'm going to be talking about Emi Martinez. There's some speculation from Argentina that Manchester United have opened negotiations with Aston Villa, but there's some distance on price. And obviously, I think I've gone on record a few times on this podcast recently saying that Manchester United and Emi Martinez, maybe, is it the best fit? I don't know. If they're going to get him, how much should they pay? And I'll be talking about that on this podcast as well. The goalkeeping position is such an essential upgrade for me over the course of this transfer window, but it doesn't seem to be too high in the priority list of Manchester United. Andy there says, again, Agent Lisandro is doing his work. Potentially, I think that they do get on, don't they? Obviously, they've been in the same Argentina camps, won the World Cup together. And, you know, like, to be honest, I think Emi Martinez is, look, he's a bit of a, in the nicest way possible, a loose cannon. Can be a bit of a loose cannon. But he is also a very good goalkeeper as well, and made that massive save in the World Cup final, which helped Argentina win the World Cup. And over the last few years, he's had a really good career trajectory upwards at Aston Villa after becoming something of a late bloomer, I suppose. So let's get into this story to start with. I'll also be talking a little bit about some alternative goalkeeping options that United have. Bruno Fernandes has been named among the nominees for the PFA Players Player of the Year, and I'll be talking about that. I'll also be talking about the news from overnight, which has suggested that Ruben Amorim is going to axe 4 players that I talked about on yesterday's podcast from the US tour. So let's see how it goes. Anyway, right, let's get into this, and I will... Yeah, let's talk about this. Okay. So this is a story from, I believe it's Ole in Argentina. Talking about Emi Martinez. Now, I've seen this going round on social media. You see these aggregator accounts that kind of pluck like little bits of information out, and that's how the news gets distributed. But I've actually found the source of the story. This is from Ole in Argentina, and it says that Manchester United has launched its bid to land Aston Villa's goalkeeper Emi Martinez at 32 years old. He isn't afraid of taking the plunge and trying his hand at Manchester United. This kind of ties in with a lot of reports which have suggested that Martinez is looking for a new challenge. Obviously, he was seen on the last day of the season, or the last appearance that Aston Villa made, or the last game that Aston Villa had at Villa Park towards the end of last season. He was seen visibly emotional in essentially what was a goodbye message from him. Aston Villa's potential PSR problems that they may have to address by the end of June. We are literally on the 20th of June, so there's 10 days left of this month. And it might be that Aston Villa, I think probably the club in the Premier League, according to like facts and figures that have been released out there, probably the one team in the league, having missed out on the Champions League, who are probably at the biggest risk of, failing PSR. And that could suggest, there's been a lot of speculation around the likes of Morgan Rogers and Ollie Watkins, other players in their team, that they might have to do a couple of quick sales in order to meet that threshold and be okay and not be suffering any consequences of failing PSR, because they did put a lot into the bag of trying to qualify for the Champions League. They've been aggressive spenders, and, it doesn't always go according to plan. And I've just had some pop-ups here. So let's talk about this Martinez story in a little bit more depth. We'll just need to translate this back to English, because I just had a little bit of a pop-up there. But it does suggest that Manchester United are looking to... They've made an approach to Aston Villa. So it says United have been the first club to officially contact Aston Villa for the goalkeeper, and some interest in him has come from the likes of Galatasaray, Barcelona, although Barcelona have already signed a new goalkeeper in Joan Garcia from Espanyol, I think, so that is them firmly out of the race, I would imagine. Atletico Madrid have been a strong contender for him as well. Speculation over the future of Jan Oblak, and that's one I haven't really understood or got, but maybe it's a case of new challenge, or Diego Simeone is looking to just refresh the squad, and obviously Argentina connection there. Maybe there's a case where you can put two and two together, if you know what I mean. But this does say that Manchester United have started formal talks, but they are a little bit away from each other on valuations. So it says that Aston Villa, and this is pretty much wherever you go, whatever kind of stories you read, this valuation of around 40 million euros, you can't really seem to get away from it. 40 million euros or 40 million pounds. Obviously, there's a little bit of a difference between the two numbers in exchange rates, that kind of thing. But it does suggest that Aston Villa are looking for 40 million in the region of that, whether that's in pounds or euros, to sell him. But obviously, just going back to what I said on, it would be quite interesting to know how drastic or bad Aston Villa's PSR position is going into the next 10 days. And obviously, the closer we get to that deadline, or the end of the football financial year, it will be interesting to see how Aston Villa's demands change, if they do change at all, because it does seem like, of all the players that are in the Aston Villa team, it does seem that Emi Martinez is probably one of the most likely to go, given all of the reporting around him over the past few weeks. It does suggest that obviously he is open to this move to Manchester United, and we have talked about Manchester United needing, well, I have anyway, talked about Manchester United needing a new goalkeeper. For me, you look at Andre Onana and you think, for me, there's not enough, or he hasn't done enough over the course of his first 2 years in a Manchester United shirt to convince you that he could be the long-term option. Though other reporting from, the likes of Fabrizio Romano and all the usual places doesn't seem to put goalkeeper too high on the agenda of places that United want to fix in their team. So I think this one is more of an opportunity in a sense. And I think we'll have to see how this one plays out. Obviously, United at the moment are linked or in talks, locked in talks with Brentford about Bryan Mbeumo, and we don't really have any kind of movement on that just yet. I will actually get to Bryan Mbeumo a little bit later, because there was another story going around over the last day or two, or yesterday actually, about what Brentford are actually asking for Bryan Mbeumo, and why the delay has been so long. United are trying to find a deal at around 60 odd million quid. There's suggestions that Brentford are holding out for 70, but I'll get to that later in the show. Just to talk about Martinez a little bit, I'll stop sharing my screen here, but just to outline what I think, and I think this is an opinion that's generally shared. I just had a reply on social media where I put a story out the other day. Not a story. I put a tweet out the other day, which essentially outlined what I thought about Emi Martinez. And that price of 40 million quid is far, far too much for a player of Emi Martinez's age and of his profile. Simply, I think I'm not entirely saying that this would be a bad move, because I do see the merits of it. We've talked a lot about Manchester United needing big characters. Manchester United needing people who are willing to come in, relish the challenge of playing for Manchester United and arresting them out of this really difficult period that they're in. And, rising to the challenge and bringing Manchester United back to where we think they should be and where they need to be as a football club. Michael Ball in the comments here has said, I know a lot of people don't want Martinez, and yes, he's erratic at times, but the thing I like is he's a leader and he will be a big character, which we are desperately lacking, which is, I hadn't read that comment until I just brought it up on the screen. This was essentially echoing, and I'm in agreement with that. I've essentially just said that's my take on it, but I do think that there are probably other options available. I say available loosely, which for me would be far more settled and better options. But obviously, if there's an opportunity which you can spot on Emi Martinez that is really good value and he can take you forward as that kind of leading persona that United need, especially in a position like in goal, then maybe it is something you do for the short term, 2-3 years or something like that. And maybe he can elevate the level that Manchester United are playing at in goal. Because I think Emi Martinez is obviously... Is he an upgrade on Onana? I think you probably should argue that he is. There have been some statistics as well. I think Martinez generally clears, according to the statistics and the those pie charts, that kind of thing. He has much better numbers in terms of distribution, exits, aerial dominance, and shot stopping, long passes, and the percentage of long passes, that kind of thing. Much better numbers than Andre Onana has. And obviously, the big thing that I think has put a lot of people off on Andre Onana of late, or over the last 2 years, has been the sheer volume of mistakes that he has made. So it is going to be interesting to see whether this is one that United pursue. But just to get, where does this rank in United's own priority list, and how quickly could they trigger a deal like this, knowing their cash position? I think this is the big limiter here. Their cash position is probably the biggest problem that they have in terms of going out and aggressively spending over the next few weeks. Their cash position is the big limiter, because we know that they need to sell a lot of players in order to raise that cash that they have to reinvest in the team. And obviously, there's a lot of attention at the moment going on Bryan Mbeumo, who I will talk about a little bit later on. If that is such a priority, surely I think United will probably continue to try and strike that deal with Brentford, which will preserve their cash position as best as they possibly can in terms of the outlay that needs to go out now or over the next month or so, and obviously to get the best value deal. Will United shy away from that and maybe pull back on that if they don't make progress? We don't really have that confirmation yet about whether they will do that. If there's an opportunity to go and get an Emi Martinez for around that 25 million number, which is much more doable, obviously, will that potentially, with the deadline that kind of Aston Villa have going towards June 30th, if they, have that PSR problem and they need to really trigger a deal quite quickly in order to strengthen their own cash position and get away from that PSR trouble, will that mean that United jump up on the priority list, or is this just fabrication from Emi Martinez's camp? I think there's a little bit of that. Emi Martinez does seem to want this move. He's been linked with the move to Saudi Arabia as well. And it's, what do you kind of believe at this point in time? For me, I think you need to look at the Bumo thing and think that United have been really trying to work on this over the last few weeks, and they haven't really got anywhere just yet. But I think those two attacking 10 positions and the striking position, I think for me, are of more importance, of greater importance than anything else in order to strengthen over the course of the summer first. I think United do definitely need to strengthen in goal, but I think that is one that you can maybe put back to later in the window. Do you go and get a profile which can compete with Andre Onana, which is the general line out of Manchester United at the moment, is that will be the way that they go, with Altay Bayındı's future up for speculation as well, and he will probably end up leaving the club. Do United go and get a younger, lower profile number 2 that can push Onana, or do they go and get a goalkeeper like Martinez who would probably command a number 1 spot? It is there's a lot of moving parts here. I think a lot of this will depend on how quickly and how decisively and how good a deal they get on Bryan Mbeumo. And we will see. We'll essentially see what happens there. But let's get on to the next story. I'm just going to try and pull something up here. It is just one more bit. There was a bit of news here on Diogo Costa, which came through over the last couple of days. And this is from a journalist called Sebastião Sousa Pinto, which has essentially outlined Ruben Amorim's preference on this, and that is that Diogo Costa, who is the Portugal number 1, plays for Porto, currently playing in the Club World Cup, obviously. They lost to Inter Miami yesterday, didn't they, with a free kick from Leo Messi. But the suggestion here is that Diogo Costa remains on Man United's list and is Amorim's favoured option since January. Obviously, he would come at a lot more of an expensive rate, I would imagine. And he would firmly be my preference in goal. If United are going to go and sign a new goalkeeper, I think that is probably the dream scenario. He's been linked with a lot of moves. Manchester City have been reported to want him. He's the one goalkeeper in Europe, really, that is of the right age, that is primed for a big move away from his current club to a massive football club. I think Manchester United are definitely one of those clubs that potentially need a new goalkeeper. Manchester City have been linked, although I think Ederson looks like he's going to be staying now. It is, for me, it's just a matter of time until Diogo Costa ends up moving. Will United be the one that ends up going to get him? I'd make it unlikely in the scenario that United are in, given the priority that they have in other positions. So you can understand why Emi Martinez is an option that United would be looking at. But I think, again, this is probably a little bit more agent noise from Emi Martinez, trying to stir up some interest in him in order to, essentially seal his move out of Aston Villa. Although, there is complete validity in the fact that United are probably going to be opening, talks with different clubs about a lot of transfer targets that they have, and trying to prioritize the order of what they do with those, understanding what kind of deals are possible for players like this. And look, United need, for me, they've signed Matheus Cunha already. They need a new number 10 on the right. Bryan Mbeumo is earmarked to be that. The striking position, Victor Gyökeres is his preference is Arsenal, which is, what do United do there? Do they sit and wait around for him if Arsenal go for Benjamin Sesko? There's a lot of difficulties and challenges that they have there, because I think he was their favoured target and Ruben Amorim's favoured target as well. Are there other options that they could potentially go for? Osimhen he's been on the table and he's been the desire for a lot of fans, but massively super big transfer fee and super big wages that maybe Manchester United can't really entertain, and there hasn't been any suggestions so far that United are going to entertain that. So there's other positions: wing back, central midfield, goalkeeper. There's a lot that United need to do. How much will they be able to get done over the course of the summer probably depends on sales. Now, let's talk a little bit more about this is a brand new thing for me, this streaming service, but I do want to talk about. Let's talk about this story for now, because it is. I did a podcast on this yesterday, talking a little bit about the chances that Manchester United had of selling the likes of Marcus Rashford, the likes of Alejandro Garnacho, the likes of Jadon Sancho and Antony, and it's turning into a bit of a problem. This really is, because Marcus Rashford's moves and his opportunities to go, it always has seemed like he's wanted to move to Barcelona. And obviously, I think you saw his brother, who earlier this month was in Barcelona to talk to Barcelona about the chances of a potential move for Marcus Rashford to Barcelona. The suggestions coming out of that was that Barcelona wanted to play this out in the long term, potentially try and push United into a corner to try and get a loan deal for the player towards the end of the window, because we know that Manchester United want to sell him and raise money. That is probably the best way that Barcelona are going to go about this. But over the course of the last week, Marcus Rashford has been firmly pushed to the side because Barcelona are progressing on a move for Nico Williams. And it seems like personal terms have been agreed. And it seems like a 50-odd million transfer fee in terms of pounds is going to be... It's just a matter of time until that one is agreed as well. So where Barcelona are getting the money from, who knows? But what does that say about Marcus Rashford? Marcus Rashford has been completely focused on trying to get that move to Barcelona. And now it seems like he's been pushed down the pecking order. That position on the left wing is going to go to Nico Williams, probably. Is Marcus Rashford an option still for Barcelona towards the end of the window on a loan deal where they could potentially use him as an alternative to an aging Robert Lewandowski? Potentially. But Manchester United need to sell him. I think Manchester United need to raise money as quickly as they possibly can. This one on Marcus Rashford will probably end up dragging out. Alejandro Garnacho, similar situation. He's probably the easiest one to sell. But Chelsea have shown interest in January. Napoli have shown interest in January. Both of them, we thought they might come back to the table after he was told by Ruben Amorim that essentially he was going to be not counted on next season. He told him to go and find a new club because he won't be included back in the team when the new season begins. But Napoli have moved on, by the looks of it, Bologna's Dan and Doy, I think it is, who plays in the same position. Much more cost-effective option for them. They've also signed Kevin De Bruyne already, and potentially are Alejandro Garnacho's chances of moving to Napoli dwindling? Have they moved on to other targets? Chelsea, at the same time, Jamie Gittins seems to be their number one target for that position. They tried to get him before the Club World Cup started, and they didn't get the deal done at the time, but all signs point to the fact that they want to go back in, revisit that deal for him. Alejandro Garnacho, what are his options now? What can Manchester United do? They're looking for 60, 70 million pounds, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of interest from a lot of clubs. I will say, though, that Garnacho is probably the easiest one to sell of these players, simply because I think he commands out of all these four players here the lowest wage. He's probably got the biggest upside, and that would mean that clubs, if they are willing to pay money for him, would probably look at the overall package of the deal and think that essentially they are more willing to put up a big transfer fee because his wage demands will be lower because of all the wages that the likes of Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho in particular have currently at Manchester United. On Jadon Sancho, Chelsea rejected that option, that obligation. They withdrew from it to sign him for 25 million quid, and now United are stuck with Jadon Sancho on the last year of his contract with very little interest in him from meaningful sources with the kind of money that United would expect. His massive contract is going to be a massive problem for United to get rid of. Maybe if Chelsea go and sign Jamie Bino Gittins over the course of the next few weeks, maybe that would open the door a little bit for Borussia Dortmund to go and revisit the possibility of signing Jadon Sancho. But I think United are looking at clawing back around 15, 20 million quid for him, and I think they owe him about 15 million quid in wages over the course of the next year. Clubs are probably going to try their luck with loan deals and this kind of thing, but United are going to need to get him off the books permanently. What happens? It's a big challenge for Manchester United, and with Sancho seemingly willing to just sit there and just command, or just sit there on his wages, take home that paycheck without... You have to question the mentality of the player at this point, and you have to question... I know we've done this many times before, and absolutely to death, but where was United's vetting on the character of Jadon Sancho if he was so willing to come in and earn massive money and do the things that he did to kind of turn his back on Erik ten Hag and calling him out in public after the support that ten Hag gave him in the first place? It is, such a bad, damning indictment on Manchester United and their recruitment over the last few years that they have spent so much money on Jadon Sancho and committed to so much to him in wages, only to see how bad it's gone. Antony is probably the second best chance they have of selling a player, given how well he played at Real Betis. I'm just going to jump back to the comments and maybe come back to this story in a second. Billy T says, "Hi Scott, hello mate. Thank you very much for watching. Please, if you haven't subscribed to this channel already, please do. Please hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. This is essentially the Promised Land podcast is an audio podcast which I've been doing for about 4 years now. We have a fair a fair whack of users who consume the podcast on Apple and Spotify, but we had a YouTube channel previously. I had a lot of issues with the back end on the YouTube channel, so I've opened this one over the last few weeks, and essentially I wanted to be able to do live stuff like this. So for those of you who are joining for the first time, if you are, please subscribe to the channel. I'm essentially going to be doing stuff like this, so talking about the rumors, talking about the latest stories around Manchester United, but the crucial, I think, motto, I guess, that I kind of live by is never too high, never too low. For those of you who don't know me, haven't seen me before, I've been working in football media for about 10, 11, 12 years. I've worked for media companies, both in publishing, running websites, and this kind of thing. So I'm very much at home with, how many stories come out and the legitimacy of them and whether we think there should be any credence in these kind of stories. So I hope I can kind of bring that to this podcast. And Billy T says, regular listener, keep up the pod. Good content. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate the support. If you're not like Billy and you haven't subscribed to this before, or if this is the first time that you're seeing me, please hit that subscribe button if you like what you see. You can also find this podcast as well in maybe different forms on Apple and Spotify. But just getting back to this story, which is from The Sun, talked about those players and the possibility of selling them. How ruthless do United want to be with these players? Because they're struggling to toe this line, really. They need to make sure that they get these players out, and Ruben Amorim is going to want to get these players out, but they also need to protect their side in order to get the best deal, in order to bring the most money in order to reinvest it in the team. It's a really difficult balance that they've got to strike. But this report here, and I think this would probably be the way that I thought it was going to go anyway. So, look, we don't know whether this is going to change or not, but it seems as though Ruben Amorim wants to just axe these players completely from the preseason tour and just work with the group of players that he knows he wants to keep. Now, this is probably, for me, I think this is the right bet. This is probably the best way to correct the culture that Manchester, I think the culture has held back Manchester United for so many years, for so long. It's been the thing for me, like player power has been a massive thing in the Manchester United base over the past few years. And I think there's been a few times over the past where United have chosen players over managers, and it's not always worked out. And it's to the point now where you have a new team in charge of recruitment, in charge of transfers, in terms of the running of the club and this kind of thing. And this has to be the right way. I know there is big concerns about how well United will be able to sell, but simply put, these players, Garnacho aside, really, haven't played well enough over the last couple of years to command the kind of transfer fees and the kind of interest in being signed by other clubs that Manchester United will want. Simply, Rashford, massive contract, hasn't played well for 2 years, going to be very, very difficult to shift off, and clubs are going to play the loan card trying to get out of the way of paying a big transfer fee. That is just, I think that's going to be the way that it is. Anthony may have a good chance of selling him. Jadon Sancho, I think, is going to be a big problem unless Dortmund gets some money in. But even the kind of wages that Sancho has, he's shown in the fact that Chelsea withdrew from the deal to sign him, the obligation that they had to sign him, his demands and his will to be among their high earners, whether it was down to being his position in the squad or his command and his position in the wage structure, Chelsea wouldn't meet those demands. So Jadon Sancho walked away from an opportunity to play for the club he supported as a boy in the Champions League next season, simply because it seemed as though the money or the status in the squad was like, not to his desires. So he's now going into this and thinking, like, I'll just wait this out and see what comes along. That's the problem that United have. But I think what's more important here is it more important to get the best kind of transfer fees and the best deals that you could possibly get for these players? Yes, that is massively important. But at the same time, I think Ruben Amorim is under a lot of pressure and needs to make sure that the cultural cut-off and the cultural expectations that he has in these Manchester United players is respected. He can't go back on the words that he put out in December and through the course of last season about like what he needs to see from his players in order to pick them in his Manchester United team. He has to take a hardline stance on the cultural aspect of things. And I think that, for me, is more important at the moment than Manchester United getting the best deal. I think that the contracts that these players have, the Manchester United are giving out, they might just have to fall on their sword a little bit in order to just get these players out and just move forward. I think that's the position that United are in. We know, according to recent suggestions and that report from The Athletic that came through about United's PSR a few weeks ago, and how they're in a pretty strong position, and the big problem for them is the cash position. I think the fact that there isn't a drastic need, really, I think, to raise money in order to strengthen that PSR position, or as bad as we thought it was before. I think United really just, in the interest of moving forward as a football club, probably have to look at the cultural thing and think, this is the most important thing that we need to do. We need to make sure that we get Ruben Amorim. We know that we need to get players in order to strengthen this team, but the cultural side, unless these players come back groveling and come in and convince Ruben Amorim that they are like willing to work for the team, which I don't think is going to happen with any of these players, let's be real, they have to be moved on. I think they have to be moved out of the club as soon as possible. United will probably go for the rest of the summer trying to seek the best deals for these kinds of players, but that will obviously impact them then on how much they can spend and how quickly they can move on incomings. It's a really, really difficult position. It's important to stress as well. I know you will see lots of noise around, this Ineos can't really, they're just like the Glazers. They can't do anything different. They are lugged with really, really challenging contractual situations for these players. It is not, and Stan the man here says, so many players get crazy contracts, they never fill the potential. That is absolutely it. And Manchester United's recent past of giving out ridiculous contracts is now coming back to bite them. I don't really think you can look at Ineos here, or Barada, or Jason Wilcox, and the people that are in charge of transfers and commanding transfer fees coming back. You got to understand the context of what they're working with. And it is very, very difficult for them to find other clubs that will take these players off them because they haven't got the right attitudes to better themselves. They haven't got the right attitudes to fit in with the team and work to what the manager or the head coach wants. But they're on massive contracts. You've seen it with other clubs. Chelsea have been through this kind of thing over the last few years. Look at the Raheem Sterling contract that they gave out. It was, I think, the first signing under Bluco and Todd Bowley. Massive deal. I think 300 grand a week or something like that. And Chelsea have shown, and they're in the same situation with a lot of their players, like Raheem Sterling, but they pulled a lot of different levers and this kind of thing. The contracts situations, the 9-year contracts, the massive selling of academy players, which they've done a hell of a lot better than Manchester United have over the last few years, has allowed them to really go aggressively after the rebuild that they have wanted to do with young players. And I don't think Chelsea did everything right, and I question the way that they were moving for a while, but it has allowed them to move past those disastrous transfers that they have committed to in the earlier days to get a team which they can move forward with. And I think they have a team now which is really, really talented. Not entirely convinced by the project that they have still at the moment, but you know how it is. It is, for me, super important that Manchester United just go about making sure that Ruben Amorim has as much of what he can get. He needs players who are physically fit. He needs players who can run to the ends of the world for him. He wants his players to run like dogs. Simply put, I would prefer Manchester United do this a little bit slower. As much as you want to see improvements next season, I would much prefer that United do this a little bit slower and stop making contractual commitments and errors like they've done over the last few years in order to move forward definitively in the long term. Jordan Curley says here, Emi Martinez is somebody we need, but I'm concerned we won't move Onana. And look, that is Andrew Onana is another contract and another transfer that Manchester United have committed to over the last few years that has been an absolute disaster. He's not earning the same kind of money that the likes of Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford are earning, but at the same time, it's been an unmitigated disaster. Who is going to look at Andrew Onana now and thinking and think, yes, we'll take this guy because he's made so many mistakes, so many high-profile mistakes in the Champions League and in Premier League matches. I think he shakes the confidence and the foundations of the team from the defense. Like, if you're playing in defense in front of Andrew Onana, how convinced are you that you're working from a solid base when you know that your goalkeeper can just drop a clanger in any kind of minute just because he's not concentrating properly? We've seen it so many times with Andre Onana. And it doesn't seem to be any real meaningful interest in him. So what do United do? Do United go with Emi Martinez and Andre Onana at the same time and have them compete it out, even though it does seem like Martinez, if he is signed, will be the player that United go about making their number one? And then what does that say about Andre Onana? If there's interest from Saudi Arabia, which has been suggested but never really followed through with, that would probably be the best way out. Sir Mickley, hello mate, says, love everything about the new channel, Scott. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your support. Gary71 says, great live chat as usual. Get involved with the chat, guys. I would really appreciate it. If you've not subscribed already to the channel, please make sure that you do that. I'm going to be running through the stories around Manchester United today, and I have a Bryan Mbeumo story to talk about in just a second. Andre Onana, again from Jordan, gives me Karius vibes. Yes, he's probably made more mistakes than Karius as well, but although not in a Champions League final. But you can see as well the fact that Karius, he was never that great a goalkeeper, but the fact he made massive errors in that 2019, I think it was, Champions League final. 2018, I think it was 2019. No, 2018, wasn't it? So I was at the 2019 Champions League final. The 2018 Champions League final against Real Madrid, the Bale mistake and the mistakes that he made, that was the end of his career, essentially, at the top with Liverpool, because the kind of mistakes you made, or you make, in that high-profile scenario, it's going to do hell on your confidence. It's really difficult. Warwick Road Andy says, hit the like button. Please do that. Please hit the like button. I really need this channel to pick up some steam. I think this is the 5th live stream that I'm doing on this channel. There will be more videos and more podcasts. Hopefully I'll do these daily. I'm trying to find a way where the conversations that I'm having with you guys and in the live chat is applicable and like usable for the audio that I'm going to upload later on Apple and Spotify. You can also subscribe to those places as well, the Promised Land and Manchester United podcast, if you want audio versions of this podcast. Usually shorter than this, but I know that on YouTube you need to kind of chat on a live stream, get involved with the chat as well, and that's something that I definitely want to do. Macmillan YouTube says, or Macmillan YT says, 40 million for a 33-year-old Bartes regen. Better young, cheaper goalkeepers out there. Also, Onana starts at the beginning of the season as Martinez is banned due to his red card at Manchester United. No thanks. That, like, I've got to say, and I have said that over the past few episodes that I've done on this channel as well, or on the YouTube channel, on the audio formats, you look at Andre Onana and you think there's so many disasters and so many mistakes that he has made. Of course. On the last day of last season, Emi Martinez comes out charging at Rasmus Højlund and has been sent off and suspended for the start of the new season. If you're looking to get away from mistakes, is Martinez the best option? He might have the character and he might have the belief in himself to go and say, I want to be Manchester United's goalkeeper and I'm capable of it. He may have those qualities, but he's just as susceptible to making mistakes. It's something that United really have to consider. And for me, just going back to what Macmillan has said there, I would prefer a younger goalkeeper. For me, that would be my preference. If you can go and sign a goalkeeper that is similar price, 25 million quid or something like that, that will sit on the bench to start with, or has enough command to come and like kick Onana out of the team straight away because he is that impressive, has that aerial command, has the character, like can be quite unassuming, but just gets on with the job. I think having watched Andre Onana for the last few years and having watched David De Gea's final season at Manchester United as well, which was riddled with mistakes, people forget that. And yes, I suppose you can look at De Gea and the fact that United let him go at the time and moved on to Onana and downgraded for money. Maybe that was a bad decision in hindsight, but at the same time, you've got to remember the context around David De Gea. He wanted a contract, which I spent most of this podcast talking about as being too expensive. He wanted to continue to be that high earner that he was at Manchester United. And ultimately, United had to get away from making decisions like that. So David De Gea was released. He's now having a fairly decent time at Fiorentina. And I think he'd be back at Old Trafford for the start of the new season as well in the pre-season friendly. But I think for me, I don't think that moving on from De Gea at the time was the wrong move. I just think that they just made the wrong decision in terms of the goalkeeper that they signed. Stan again says, poor signings by Erik ten Hag, but feel the Ineos era is quietly moving forward with shrewd young potential signings and proven Premier League players. To me, Stan, that is the right way to go. And it will take some time in order for these deals to play out, I think. But I think I like what they are doing. I like the recruitment drive that they're going on. I like the kind of profiles of players that they've been picking up. I think Matheus Cunha is a good signing, if a little bit overpriced. I think Mbeumo, who I'll talk about in a second, if they go to the lengths that the reports suggest that Brentford want, that is probably too big a price. But at the same time, I think Bryan Mbeumo would be a really, really good signing for Manchester United as well. To me, you look at the likes of Aiden Heaven, picked up for £1 million from Arsenal, and players like that, and Diego Leon is going to be joining in the left wing back role and be getting a look at from July 1st, I think it is. He'll be with United for the start of pre-season. Ruben Amorim will get the chance to look at him. Those kind of players that United can sign for very little money, bleed into the first team, send out on loan, and show that they have the potential that Manchester United should have in their young players. It might not work out for everyone. It might not work out for Diego Leon. Might not work out for Sekou Kone in the end. But if United are picking up these players on very small money, but they're talented for their age and they're really good to be brought into the football club, they might develop into first team players regularly for the future. They might also be loaned out and deemed not good enough by Manchester United. But the hope is that they play at such a level that can mean United can sell these players for profit. That is the right way that United should be going about things. I'll be talking in a second about Bryan Mbeumo and the latest on him. But like I say, please subscribe to the channel if you've not done so already. I would really, really appreciate it. This channel is brand new. It is a brand new extra arm of the Promised Land podcast, which has been going for about 4 years or so. And let's talk about Bryan Mbeumo, shall we? There's a new suggestion which has been picked up. My phone's just ringing there. New suggestion which has been picked up by... it's not on the screen yet. There we go. New suggestion that's been picked up and reported on by Duncan Castles. Now, this is... I've not met Duncan Castles before, but he has been reliably quite good on the likes of Jose Mourinho stories over the course of the past, but the hit rate isn't great, dependent on certain stories that United have come out around United over the past. There's a new suggestion from him on his podcast, which has said, and I'm quoting here, this is the grab, from this podcast, the indication to Manchester United on Bryan Mbeumo was that Bryan Mbeumo had chosen to move there. He'd verbally told them his preference was to move there, and this came from David Ornstein. I've not exactly heard the same on that, so is there a chance that Tottenham come in and go and snatch Bryan Mbeumo from the noses of Manchester United? That's what's being suggested there, I guess. I think there's a good chance that Mbeumo, should Tottenham get to the price that Brentford are asking for, which is 70 million quid, according to this, and that may be the hold-up for this deal, that he might choose Tottenham instead of Manchester United. And there's a couple of obvious reasons for that. It allows him to stay in London, and secondly, it allows him to to reunite with Thomas Frank, who's just been appointed as the Tottenham manager. Now, this... I see comments. I'll come back to them from Macmillan in just a second. I'll talk about Bryan Mbeumo first, I think. Look, I know it's frustrating that this Bryan Mbeumo deal seems to be massively elongated. It's been a long time now. It's been a good few weeks since David Ornstein said that Bryan Mbeumo had chosen Manchester United and that was the deal that he wanted. But Brentford are going to drive a hard bargain. I thought, personally, that Brentford would be a lot more easier to crack down than on this, than they've proven to be so far. If it is the case that Brentford are demanding 70 million euros for Bryan Mbeumo, that for me is too much. And if anything, I thought that really anything above the kind of fee that Wolves got from Matheus Cunha, that was a release clause, by the way. I think that was probably around the same area and the same top area that Manchester United should have got to Bryan Mbeumo. I think if you're looking at 70 million quid for Bryan Mbeumo, there's a fair reason why Manchester United are taking their time on this deal. I think they really need to make sure that they get a deal which is not judged as overpriced, because the difficulty that they have is, and United have had a reputation for this over the last few years with the people that have been in charge of their recruitment and negotiations, they've generally caved in. They've generally gone to a club. I always take the case of Harry Maguire in the summer of 2019. United wanted to pay 50 million quid or something for Harry Maguire. Leicester wanted 80 million quid. United spent weeks and weeks and weeks trying to sign Harry Maguire for a price they felt was worth it. And then in the end, they ended up paying 80 million quid, which was Leicester's asking price for Harry Maguire. And we know the fact that Harry Maguire was signed, and like, he's had good spurts. He's had difficult moments in his career at Manchester United as well. There's been, look, for a long time, and probably still now, if you asked anybody whether you think Harry Maguire is worth 80 million, you'd say no. Like, it was an overvalued, overinflated deal, which United caved into when they could have just, in the first place, got him for the same price and saved a few weeks worth of negotiating. United are in danger that they have a reputation, or as a football club and that previous team have a reputation for overpaying for players, whether that's wages, whether that is transfer fees. There's a new team in charge at the moment, and they need to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes. So it could mean that this Bryan Mbeumo deal goes on for a little bit longer, but I think the important thing here will be to make sure that Bryan Mbeumo especially, and probably some other players as well, how many other players they'll be able to get in before the start of pre-season, I don't really know. It's looking like that's 10 days, 2 weeks away, or whatever it is. It doesn't seem like United will be doing any more than Bryan Mbeumo before that point, unless this Emi Martinez speculation and Aston Villa's PSR position is bad enough to dictate a sale for them at a decent price by June 30th. It's a challenge, but United really need to have a line that they don't cross with this Bryan Mbeumo deal. And I'm not saying for a second that they walk away from this. But hey, I'm not in the room. We're not in the room as we look at this and look at the valuations of players, this kind of thing. You could be one of those people that says, just pay the money to get the deal done, but then United aren't setting the precedent that they need to set for future transfer deals. People will look at this and look at the amount of time that it's taken for Manchester United to get to a deal for Bryan Mbeumo. And if they go close to that figure, that suggested figure of 70 million quid that Brentford want, then it looks like they'll just be those kind of pushovers that can be taken advantage of in the transfer market again. So that's a difficult thing. Yeah, Ineos and the transfer recruitment team and the people in charge at the moment are fighting against the tide of bad contracts, massive transfer fees for players in the past, for players who don't have the right attitude to thrive in the environment, a difficult environment, I might add, at Manchester United. And it seems as though, you know, it seems as though they have a lot of difficulty, and there's going to be a lot of difficulty over the course of this transfer window especially, and probably next summer as well, as United try and get rid of these contracts that are so detrimental to them. Because really, I don't think you'll see the best version of United, really, for a couple of years at least, when the wage structure's been reset, when United have made enough money back on sales, and when United have managed to clear out the cultural rot that has stifled them and held them back for so long. Just a few comments here from Macmillan again. Just coming back to... Let's do these two comments first, actually. Do you think Brentford are waiting to July 1st to do this Mbeumo deal for PR reasons? They just lost Thomas Frank and need to replace him and Mbeumo, so they may want that money to help 25-26 is a good point. Maybe that is something that works into this. Very, 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 very fair point. And maybe that is potentially something that is holding this deal back. Although I think Brentford's financial situation generally has been pretty good over the last few years. So maybe it features and filters into that. It's also taken Arsenal like 2 months, this is Macmillan again, to do the Zubamendi deal. There are so many implications that come from three parties. Not all deals work out at the same speed. And I think this is an important point to make as well. And look, I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans looking at this Zubamendi deal and thinking, oh God, this is taking forever. What are Arsenal doing? Also, the fact is that players go on holiday, and they need this time over the course of the postseason to go away and recharge and this kind of thing. Also, there will probably be people at football clubs that have other priorities. Brentford have been negotiating for Thomas Frank. That deal's been done first. So it's going to be generally the same people that are doing these deals as well and negotiating. So it could be that this Mbeumo deal has been pushed back a little bit, and it could be that they wait until the start of July. Could very well be. Who knows? But yeah, it's important to stress that as frustrating as it is to know that United aren't getting deals done in the speed and the fashion like this, the speed and the fashion that everybody wants them to do it in, doesn't necessarily mean that it's all disaster. You just have to get used to this. We're still in June, We're still in June. It's the 20th of June, and there's still plenty of time left over the course of the transfer window yet. You obviously have the start of pre-season where you need to make sure that you get in as many players as possible. But once this Mbeumo deal goes through, if it is before the start of pre-season, you don't really see any extra incomings coming in for Manchester United until they sell a player. And I've talked about those players earlier in the stream as well. Let's just come back to that final Macmillan comment there. Senny Lammonds is the type of goalkeeper that we should be looking at. Our biggest issue was scoring goals last season. Spend that on a 40 million CM instead of a declining train smash goalkeeper in Martinez. Mate, I completely agree. I think Lammonds is the kind of goalkeeper that I think United should be looking at. What I want out of a goalkeeper, let me just put this out there again if you've not seen or heard this from me already. No fuss. No fuss. No mistakes. Quiet and unassuming. Commanding at the same time. Aerially commanding. Just no fuss. I don't want to see goalkeepers making any mistakes anymore. I just want to see a safe pair of hands in goal that can deal with the pressure. And I know that's a lot to ask from a lot of goalkeepers, but you need a physically imposing figure, aerially dominant, doesn't make mistakes. There's been an obsession over the last few years about goalkeepers that play with their feet. I don't really think you really need to do that to massive extents anymore in this kind of Ruben Amorim system. You obviously need to have a fair bit of ability with your feet, but I don't think having the best ball-playing goalkeeper in the world is the most important thing. Like it was to Erik ten Hag. I don't think that's super important. So Lammonds is a good option. There's other good young goalkeeping options out there as well. But I think I'll wrap it up here because maybe there's one other thing. Bruno Fernandes has been named among 6 nominations for the PFA Players Player of the Year, alongside Alexander Isak, Alexis McAllister, Cole Palmer, Declan Rice, and Mo Salah. I think you probably know which way this nomination is going to, this award is going to go. Mo Salah is probably going to win it. Won both Player of the Year awards, didn't he? From the PFA, Players Player of the Year, or the Football Writers Association and the Premier League Player of the Year. I think he won both of those. So I think Mohamed Salah will be the one that's going to be taking that award home. But it's just a really good reflection on Bruno Fernandes that he's been named by the players as one of the top 6 contenders for Players Player of the Year. Anyway, guys, this has been a 52-minute stream, 53-minute stream or something like that. I'll be doing more of these. So if you do like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the channel. Please get involved in the comment section as well. And please, if you like content like this, that is, I'm not going to come at you with like sensationalism and this kind of over-the-top nonsense that I think dominates. I'm not throwing shade at anybody here. Like, people can do what they want, and I think all the power to them. But I do think what that does is kind of create a damaging environment and social media scene among Manchester United, when I don't think it's always as bad as you make it out to be. So that's what I try and bring. Never too high, never too low is the mantra that I try and live by with every piece of content that I make. Doesn't mean that it's going to get the most views or the most downloads or whatever, but I think I just want to be kind of true to myself, because I've lived in media and worked in media for a decade plus, and I think a lot of the noise isn't needed, and I think it creates hysteria, especially at Manchester United, when it doesn't need to be created. So I think that is the kind of approach that I'm trying to take to content. Like I said, I'm not throwing shade at anybody that sees that as the best way forward, but I think that for me is my approach to it, and I do think that kind of approach is needed at times like this in slow periods of the transfer window, especially last season when United were losing week after week. But if you look at the bigger picture and the changes that were being made behind the scenes in terms of the personnel that were running or are running the football club now, I do think Manchester United are in a better position and will be better off in the long term, it just might not be like that, all that quick in terms of turning things around. Obviously, Ruben Amorim will need to make sure that the performances on the pitch are a hell of a lot better, and he will need help in the transfer window in order to do that. But that's the approach that I take to the content. That is the approach of the Promised Land. Never too high, never too low. And it has been that over the past 4 or 5 years, as long as the podcast has been running. Over 350 episodes on the audio feeds so far and to date. I'm going daily now, essentially, to talk about whatever the latest is and the big topics and the big talking points around Manchester United. So there'll be plenty more to come. I haven't done anything on strikers recently because I've just spent some time away on holidays. The reason why I haven't streamed on this YouTube platform for a week or so. But I'm back now. I will be back doing more. So if you do like what you see, please subscribe to the channel. Please follow me on social media at @_Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, TikTok, etc., etc. Please, if you want audio versions of this podcast as well, please subscribe on Spotify and Apple, or please subscribe to this YouTube channel, because this is the place for me now where I'll be doing things like this, uploading other videos and talking to you on a level like this. If you want to get involved in the live chat, thanks to those of you that have been involved in the live chat today as well. And look, I'll see you soon, everyone, for another episode of the Promised Land podcast. Please, if you want audio versions of this, go and subscribe to the audio platform as well. I'd usually put hyperlinks in the description of this, but since this channel is so new, I actually can't do that yet. YouTube won't let me put hyperlinks in. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. If you subscribed recently and come from the other channel, which I've just moved from, thank you very, very much as well. And I'll see you soon, everyone. If there's breaking news coming up soon, I'll try and jump on where I can. But yeah, follow me on all those places and subscribe to the Promised Land podcast. Get in the comments, like the video, and I'll see you soon, everyone, for another Promised Land podcast or Promised Land live stream. Thanks, everyone.